Meet Pennywise. Now we aren't strangers, are we?
With Welcome to Derry just premiering on HBO Max, bringing Pennywise back for a new generation, it's the perfect time for me to dissect what makes this nightmare work. Because the answer isn't what you think. He's the dancing clown, the eater of worlds, and a monster that probably still hangs around in the back of your mind. For decades, Pennywise has been the undisputed face of terror. But in a genre packed with slashers, demons, and ghosts, what is it about this particular creature and this particular franchise that has not just survived, but thrived, becoming a true cultural obsession? But the secret to his lasting power isn't just that people are scared of clowns. The real answer is far more personal and a lot more disturbing. So what's cooking, my fellow plot heads? In case you don't know me, I'm Brian, a Hollywood insider, a script doctor, and someone who definitely doesn't trust red balloons anymore. This is The Secret Recipe, where we break down the storytelling DNA behind the most iconic movies, shows, and characters, and cook up the creative tools you can steal for your own work. And today, we're heading straight into the sewers to see what makes Pennywise the nightmare that never dies. At first glance, the terror of Pennywise seems simple. He's the poster child for coulrophobia, the fear of clowns. And Stephen King masterfully took this common unease and twisted it into something monstrous. But that disguise of childhood fun is just a lure. The first and most important ingredient in Pennywise's terror recipe is that he isn't just a monster that preys on children. He's a monster that preys on the traumas of children. Pennywise becomes a physical manifestation of abuse, neglect, and the deep-seated fears that shape us at our most vulnerable. He reflects the very real fears in the lives of the Losers Club. For Beverly Marsh, he appears as blood bursting from her sink, a terrifying symbol of her entry into womanhood and the unspeakable abuse she suffers from her father. For Eddie Kaspbrak, the leper is a walking embodiment of his fear of sickness, a fear systematically implanted by his controlling mother. For Bill Denbrough, Pennywise is the ghost of his murdered brother Georgie, R.I.P. Georgie, a manifestation of his overwhelming guilt and grief. And Welcome to Derry's 1962 timeline, we see this same playbook. Young Mary Clements watched bloody fingers crawl through the sink of her drain, a direct echo of Beverly's trauma and Georgie's death. Different decade, same visceral nightmare. This is the genius of his creation. The monster's power is drawn from the real world, a supernatural stand-in for the all-too-human evils of domestic abuse, racism, and bullying. It's one thing to be scared of a creature in the sewer. It's another thing entirely when that creature knows the secret pain you endure behind closed doors, confirming our darkest childhood suspicion. The monsters on the bed may be real, but the ones in your home are far worse. Takeaway 1. Horror that lasts doesn't just scare your characters, it exposes them. Don't invent fear in a vacuum. Anchor your monster in emotional truths. That could be childhood wounds, buried shame, internalized pain. The scariest stories externalize something that's real. Pennywise works because he's not about fear. He's just made of it. When you build your own villain, ask, what part of my character's soul does this thing feed on? If the first ingredient is why Pennywise terrifies us, this one's about how he does it. Because Pennywise isn't a silent stalker like Michael Myers, or a slasher just hiding behind a mask. He's a performer. A monster who turns every kill into a show. He doesn't just hunt his victims, he toys with them, he studies them. Every encounter feels like a setup to some cruel joke, one where we know the punchline, and it's coming. A red balloon floating in a field, a child's voice echoing from a storm drain, a puppet-like dance in the dark. There's always a sense that he's in control, and everyone else is just part of his circus. That unpredictability is the essence of terror. Pennywise can appear anywhere. In the sewer, on a projector, or inside your own head. One minute he's goofy and grinning, the next he's a nightmare unfolding from a refrigerator. And then you have him turning into a demon baby. Sometimes he turns into your lampshade. You really never know which version you're going to get, or when the laugh will turn into a scream. And that vertigo that it gives you, that's the point. Fear is about anticipation, not just what comes, but when it comes. And Pennywise is masterful at throwing us off the scent of what's going to happen and how it's going to appear. Every scare feels tailored, theatrical, and cruelly personal. He is the ringmaster of fear. Takeaway 2. For storytellers, this is the anatomy of tension, something that I talk about in some of my other videos. Horror lives in the rhythm, in the timing, in the contrast, and in the control. Pennywise is terrifying because he paces his scares like a conductor. If you build suspense, you stretch it, and then you break it. A great horror scene doesn't just frighten the characters, it manipulates us right alongside them. Now, the third ingredient is baked right into the story structure, something that we'll continue to see through the next couple seasons of this series: the 27-year cycle. Pennywise wakes up every 27 years to feed, plunging Derry into a season of violence and fear, before crawling back into his hole. On the surface, it's a brilliant storytelling trick that lets the narrative jump between timelines, showing the losers as kids and as adults. And now we're going back through the generations. But its real power is how perfectly it mirrors the nature of trauma. Trauma doesn't just happen once and then it's over. It goes dormant. We grow up, move away, and build new lives. We try to forget. The Losers Club all get out of Derry, and their memories of that horrific summer fade into some bizarre amnesia. They become successful architects, fashion designers, even comedians. They think they've escaped, but the cycle is inescapable. Just as Pennywise is destined to return, their trauma is destined to resurface. Mike Hanlon's phone call is the trigger. The moment the past kicks down the door, they're all forced to go back home and confront the monster they thought that they destroyed. Which is really to say they're forced to confront the parts of themselves they thought they left behind. This cycle is a powerful metaphor for how unresolved pain works in our own lives. It's why a certain song can trigger a painful memory, or why a tough time in adulthood can feel hauntingly familiar to a struggle from our youth. And in a wild case of life imitating art, our culture has echoed this cycle. The novel came out in 1986. The miniseries aired in 1990. Then almost 27 years later, the blockbuster It Chapter 1 hit theaters in 2017. Now, with the prequel series Welcome to Derry just having premiered, the cycle is beginning all over again for a new generation. The story itself refuses to stay dormant, ensuring that Pennywise is never really gone. Takeaway 3. Structure can be theme, or at least very tied to it. The 27-year cycle in It isn't just clever world building. It's a storytelling architecture that mirrors how trauma resurfaces. When you design your plot, think about rhythm and recurrence. Can the story's form echo its meaning? The best horror loops because healing does too. So create cycles that force your characters to re-enter old wounds until they finally face them. All right, we've made it to the secret ingredient. We've covered the monster, the trauma, and the cycle. But there's one last secret ingredient from deep down beneath the city. The town of Derry itself. Derry, Maine isn't just a backdrop. It's arguably the story's real villain. It's a character that is sick, poisoned by the creature living under its streets, but it's also complicit in its evil. Stephen King is a master of showing the darkness under the surface of a small town, and Derry is his magnum opus. The adults in Derry aren't just oblivious, they are willfully ignorant. They see the bullying, the racism, and the abuse, and they look the other way. When children go missing, the town grieves for a little while, and then seems to collectively agree to forget.
Well, how about that?
This town-wide amnesia is a defense mechanism, just like the adult losers forgetting their own childhoods. It's easier to ignore the evil than to face the terrifying truth that your home is a predator's hunting ground. Pennywise thrives on that apathy. He's able to operate for centuries because the town lets him. His evil infects people, making them colder, meaner, and more likely to turn a blind eye to their neighbors' suffering. Derry is a metaphor for the societal structures that enable violence and abuse. The true horror of It isn't just that a monster is killing kids, but that an entire community is allowing it to happen. It suggests that the scariest monsters aren't supernatural. They're the human ones who choose to do nothing in the face of evil. The town itself is just one big haunted house, and its curse is a cycle of violence it refuses to break. The losers aren't just fighting a clown, they're fighting the very soul of their hometown. Takeaway 4. Horror isn't just personal, it's also cultural. Derry reminds writers that environment is character. Your setting can carry moral weight, shaping how people behave and what they ignore. If you want your story to hit harder, let the world itself be complicit. Create towns, systems, or societies that allow the horror to exist. And suddenly, your story is saying something much, bigger. The scariest monsters don't just live in the sewers, they live in the silence and complicity. So what's the recipe for this eternal nightmare? From a storytelling perspective, you start with the monster that serves as the externalization of your hero's inner conflict. You build the story around a powerful universal theme, the traumatic loss of childhood innocence. You place it all within a setting that is a thematic reflection of the monster itself, an ecosystem of societal decay, and finally, you anchor it with the most resonant horror of all, a world of failed guardians who force children to fight the battles they were too cowardly to face themselves. This is the narrative architecture that makes Pennywise float. He isn't just a monster, he's a perfectly engineered device for exploring personal trauma, systemic rot, and the terror of abandonment. His legacy endures because the story he serves is about the anxieties that exist far beyond the borders of Derry. He lasts not because we have a thing for scary clowns, though that might be part of it, but because his story gives us a way to understand our own relationship with fear, memory, and the courage it takes to face the monsters of our past. So the next time you're thinking about Pennywise, or you're watching the show, or you're rewatching the movies, what are you actually afraid of?
If you'll come with me, you'll float too.
So once again, I'm Brian, this is Plotluck, and if you've ever loved a story, felt let down by one, or dreamed of telling your own, pull up a chair, hit subscribe, and let's stir the plot together. That's a wrap!